Hello and welcome to English Parlor. Today, I want to share a powerful story that will help you improve your English in a natural and emotional way. As you listen, you can learn simple daily vocabulary and real-life sentences. So relax, listen carefully, and let's begin. My name is Gloria Benson. I am 71 years old, and I live in Savannah, Georgia. For 34 years, I worked as a librarian. Even now, I still drink tea every morning and read by the front window. The morning everything changed, I came downstairs and stopped. Something was wrong in my living room. Then my eyes landed on the empty space beside the front window, and my heart dropped. My rocking chair was gone. That chair had belonged to my mother. After she passed away, I kept it by the window in my own house. Later, I rocked Marcus in that same chair when he was a baby. I cried in it after my husband died. That chair was not just furniture, it was memory, comfort, and family. But now it was gone. In its place sat a gray sectional sofa. It looked cold and stiff. Then I heard humming from the kitchen. My daughter-in-law, Denise, was pouring orange juice into a glass, like it was any normal Tuesday morning. I walked into the kitchen. "Denise," I said, "where is my chair?" She did not look up right away. "Oh," she said lightly, "I moved it out." I blinked. "Moved it where?" "It was old," she said. "It didn't match the new layout. Marcus and I agreed the living room needed updating." Updating. That word landed on me like a slap. I stared at her. "You moved my mother's chair without asking me?" Now she looked at me. "I was just trying to make the house look nicer." The house. I said nothing after that. Instead, I turned and walked to the garage. I found the chair near the back wall, pushed between old paint cans and a broken lawnmower. One armrest had cracked during the move. I touched the split wood with my fingers and felt something move through me. Not full anger, not yet. It was more like waking up. I carried the chair back into the house by myself. It took time because I had to stop and rest. Denise watched from the hallway with her arms crossed. When I finally set the chair back in its place by the window, she said, "I already arranged the room." I lowered myself into the chair and looked out at the street. "Then arrange around me," I said quietly. She did not answer. That night, I heard Denise and Marcus arguing in their room. I had only gone out to get a glass of water, but when I heard my name, I stopped. "She is impossible," Denise said sharply. "She acts like this is still her house." There was a pause. Then Marcus answered, "It is her house." Another pause. Then Denise said, "For now." I stood frozen in the dark hallway. For now. Those two words followed me back to bed. I did not sleep much. I just lay there remembering all the years this house had held me together. My husband, James, died when Marcus was 11 years old. A heart attack, no warning, no goodbye. One moment, I was planning dinner, and the next, I was a widow trying to explain death to a frightened little boy. After James died, I made one promise to myself. No matter what happened, no one would ever take our home from me. I worked overtime at the library. I covered extra weekend programs. I skipped vacations and stretched every dollar. I paid that mortgage month after month, year after year, until one day I paid it off completely. That deed was in a fireproof box in my closet. Alongside it were my marriage certificate, Marcus's birth record, and every important paper I had protected for decades. That was why Denise's little changes had started to bother me long before the chair. First, she repainted the guest bathroom without asking. Then the hallway. then the kitchen cabinets. She replaced my flower curtains with plain white ones. She threw away the sunflower welcome mat I had bought when Marcus was in high school. Every time I questioned her, she smiled and said she was only helping. Every time I looked at Marcus, he looked away. That silence from my son hurt more than Denise's behavior, but silence from your own child feels like betrayal. 3 days after the chair incident, I went to the grocery store. I bought bread, eggs, tomatoes, tea bags, and peach yogurt. When I came home, I climbed my porch steps slowly, balancing 2 heavy bags against my hip. I pulled out my front door key and slid it into the lock. It did not fit. I frowned and tried again. Still nothing. I looked closer. The lock had been changed. I stood there on my own porch, holding my groceries, staring at a front door that no longer recognized me. I knocked once, then twice, then hard enough to make the glass rattle. Denise opened the door with an annoyed expression. "What?" she asked. I held up my key. "Why doesn't this work?" "Oh," she said. "We changed the locks yesterday." "We?" My fingers tightened around the grocery bags. "You changed the locks on my house?" She rolled her eyes slightly. "The locksmith said the old one was a security risk." Then she opened a kitchen drawer, took out a new key, and placed it in my hand. "Here," she said. "This one is yours." I looked down at that key. Cold, bright, unfamiliar. And in that moment, I felt something. Someone in that house had stopped seeing me as the owner, and I was beginning to fear that the next thing they planned to take from me would not be a chair. It would be everything. That night, I did not cook dinner. I did not turn on the television. I did not even take off my shoes. I just sat in my rocking chair by the front window, holding that new key in my hand, like it might explain something if I stared at it long enough. The house felt different now, not because of the new sofa or the painted walls or Denise's sharp perfume drifting down the hallway. No, it felt different because for the first time in 53 years, I no longer felt safe inside it. I kept hearing her words in my head. "This one is yours." As if she were doing me a favor. As if I needed permission to enter the place I had paid for with 34 years of work and half a lifetime of sacrifice. When Marcus came home from the backyard later that evening, I heard his boots at the door and looked up. For 1 second, I saw the little boy he used to be. The child who used to run home after school and throw his backpack by the stairs. Then Denise called his name from the kitchen, and that little boy disappeared again. He stepped into the living room and saw me sitting there. "Hey, Mom," he said carefully. I held up the key. "Did you know she changed the locks?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "Yeah, Denise said the old locks were loose." "And you agreed to that?" He hesitated too long. "Mom, it's not a big deal." I stared at him. "Not a big deal?" He let out a tired breath. "Why does everything have to become a problem?" That sentence cut deeper than he knew. I had spent nearly 2 years making myself smaller, so things would not become a problem. I stayed quiet when Denise repainted rooms. I stayed quiet when my dishes disappeared from the kitchen and her modern white plates took their place. I stayed quiet when my living room started looking less like my home and more like a place I was only visiting. And now my son was asking me why everything had to become a problem. I stood slowly. "Marcus, when a woman cannot open her own front door, it is already a problem." He looked ashamed for half a second. Then Denise entered the room, carrying 2 wine glasses. "What's going on?" she asked. Marcus looked at me, then away. "Nothing." Nothing. That was his answer again. I went to bed early, but I locked my bedroom door before I slept. It was the first time I had ever done that in my own home. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. I made coffee and stood at the kitchen sink watching the sky turn pale blue over the neighbor's fence. My hands were steady, but something inside me had changed overnight. I was no longer confused. Confusion can keep you still. Clarity makes you move. After breakfast, Denise came into the kitchen, wearing workout clothes and scrolling on her phone. She opened the refrigerator, saw the peach yogurt I had bought, and took one. "That's mine," I said. She looked over her shoulder. "It's yogurt, Gloria." Her voice had changed over the last year. It used to be polite. Now it carried the slow confidence of someone who believed she had already won. I looked at her for a long moment. "You should ask before taking things that are not yours." She gave a small laugh. "You mean like a yogurt?" I did not smile. "I mean anything." For the first time, her expression tightened. She closed the refrigerator door and stepped closer. "You know, Marcus and I are trying to build a future, too." I set my coffee cup down carefully. "Then build it." Her jaw hardened. "That's exactly what we're doing." There it was again. That strange tone. Not gratitude, not respect. Claim. She walked away before I could answer. I finished my coffee, got dressed, and drove downtown to the public library. Not my old branch. The bigger one. The one with the high ceilings, quiet reading tables, and rows of reference books that still smelled like paper and dust and safety. The moment I walked in, I felt calmer. Libraries had always been where I thought best. In books, facts stay facts. Pages do not smile while they lie to your face. I found a table near the legal reference computers and sat down. At first, I told myself I was overreacting. Then I typed 3 words into the search bar. Property rights, Georgia. That search changed everything. I spent 2 hours reading. Then 3. Then 4. I read about home ownership, occupant rights, property transfer forms, and elder financial abuse. I read words I never thought I would need to apply to my own life. Manipulation, coercion, undue influence, fraud. My stomach tightened with every page, because the examples sounded too familiar. A family member asking to simplify paperwork, a child moving in temporarily and slowly taking control, a homeowner being pressured to sign forms without proper explanation, changes made for convenience. The words on the screen felt like someone had secretly written my last 2 years down and filed them under a warning label. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. Then something else came back to me. 2 weeks earlier, after dinner, Denise had placed a stack of papers in front of me. "Can you sign these tomorrow?" she had asked. "It's just insurance stuff." I had been tired that night. My reading glasses were upstairs. I told her I would look at them in the morning. She looked annoyed, but she picked the papers back up. At the time, I thought nothing of it. Now, sitting in that quiet library, I felt cold all over. What had been in those papers? I left the computer and walked to the restroom, splashed water on my face, and stared at myself in the mirror. My reflection looked older than usual, not weak, just wounded. I whispered, "Wake up, Gloria." And for the first time in months, I believed I finally had. On the way home, I stopped at a small coffee shop and sat in my car for 10 full minutes before going inside. I needed time to think. That was when I remembered Lorraine Hicks. Lorraine was a retired attorney and one of my favorite former library patrons. She used to bring her grandchildren to story hour every Thursday afternoon. Over the years, we became friends. Smart woman, sharp eyes, the kind of person who could hear one sentence and know exactly what someone was trying to hide. I took out my phone and called her. She answered on the third ring. "Gloria?" My voice sounded strange even to me. "Lorraine, I think I need help." There was a pause. Then her tone changed immediately. "What kind of help?" I looked through the windshield at the passing cars, at the ordinary afternoon moving on as if my life had not just tilted. "My house," I said quietly. "I think something is happening with my house." She did not waste a second. "Come over today," she said. "Bring every paper you have." Every paper. Those words hit me hard, because suddenly, deep in my chest, I knew this was bigger than the lock, bigger than the chair, bigger than Denise's rude little comments and Marcus's cowardly silence. Something had already started. And if I was not careful, I might be only one signature away from losing everything. When I pulled into my driveway an hour later, the house looked the same as always. But as I sat there with my hands on the steering wheel, I realized something terrifying. Sometimes danger does not arrive with broken windows or loud voices. Sometimes it smiles at you from your own kitchen. And I had a terrible feeling that before this day was over, I was going to find proof. I sat in my car for a full minute before going inside. The house looked the same from the outside. White porch rails, blue shutters, my hanging fern by the front steps. Everything neat, everything familiar. But now I understood something painful. A house can look safe and still hold danger inside it. I picked up my purse, took a deep breath, and unlocked the front door with that cold new key Denise had given me. The moment I stepped inside, I heard voices. Denise was in the kitchen. Marcus was there too. They were speaking in low, tense tones. I could not hear every word, but I heard enough. "She doesn't need to know yet," Denise said. Then Marcus answered, "I just don't want this to blow up." I stopped in the hallway, my heart beating hard against my ribs. Denise laughed softly. "It'll only blow up if you lose your nerve." I stood very still. Then I made my footsteps louder and entered the kitchen. Both of them looked up quickly. Marcus tried to smile. "Hey, Mom, you're back early." I set my purse on the counter. "Apparently." Denise folded her arms. "Did you need something?" I looked at her, then at my son. "No, but it sounds like you two do." For a second, no one spoke. Then Denise gave a small fake laugh. "We were just talking about bills." I nodded slowly. "Of course." Marcus would not meet my eyes. That silence again. That weak, guilty silence that had become more painful than shouting. I went upstairs without another word. The fireproof box was still in my closet on the top shelf behind my winter blankets. I pulled it down carefully and set it on the bed. My hands were trembling now, not because I was fragile, but because some part of me already knew I was about to find something I could never unsee. Inside were the papers I had protected for years. The deed, the mortgage payoff letter, property tax records, my marriage certificate, Marcus's birth certificate. Everything was still there. At first, I felt relief. Then I noticed something else. One of the folders had been moved. I knew it immediately because I am the kind of woman who notices order. Librarians do not just organize books. We organize life. And that folder had not been sitting on top the last time I opened the box. I picked it up and opened it. Inside were extra copies of my property documents. Not originals. Copies. And there, clipped behind them, was a printed form I had never seen before. A quitclaim deed template. I sat down slowly on the edge of my bed. My name was typed on the line marked grantor. Marcus's full name was typed on the line marked grantee. The legal description of my property had already been entered. My house, my land, my address, all neatly prepared. Only one thing was missing, my signature. I could not breathe for a moment. The room seemed to tilt slightly, as if the floor had shifted under me. I read the paper again. Then again. No matter how many times I looked at it, the truth stayed the same. My son had prepared paperwork to transfer my house into his name. I pressed one hand against my chest and stared at the page until the words blurred. It is a terrible thing to discover that betrayal does not always come from enemies. Sometimes it comes from the child you once rocked to sleep. I do not know how long I sat there. A minute, maybe 10. Then my sadness began changing shape. It sharpened. Because pain can paralyze you, but clarity can move you. And suddenly, I was moving. I placed the deed form into my purse, along with the other property papers, and went downstairs. Marcus was alone in the kitchen now, rinsing a coffee mug. He turned when he heard me. "You okay?" I looked at him, really looked at him. His father's eyes, my chin, tired shoulders, weak posture. A grown man who still looked like he was waiting for someone else to tell him what kind of life to live. "Marcus," I said quietly, "have you ever put paperwork in front of me and hoped I would sign it without reading?" His face changed instantly. That was answer enough. He opened his mouth, then closed it. "Mom!" "Just answer me." He swallowed. "It wasn't like that." I gave a short, painful laugh. "That is never a good beginning." He set the mug down. "Denise thought it would make things easier." "Easier for who?" He looked away. I stepped closer. "For who, Marcus?" His voice dropped. "For all of us." "No," I said. "Not for all of us. For you." He rubbed his forehead like a man already tired of consequences he had not yet fully faced. "Mom, listen." "No, you listen." My voice did not rise, but it became hard. "I opened my fireproof box today and found a quitclaim deed with your name on my house." His face went pale. Not confused, not shocked, caught. That hurt more than anything. He knew, he had known. Maybe not every detail, maybe not every step, but enough. And he had still said nothing while Denise changed my locks and moved my mother's chair and acted like I was already halfway gone. "Mom," he whispered, "I can explain." I looked at him for a long moment. Then I said the truest thing I had said in months. "That is exactly what scares me." He stared at me, wounded. Good. At that moment, I needed him wounded enough to finally feel what he had allowed. Before he could say anything else, Denise walked in from the patio. She saw our faces and stopped. "What happened?" I reached into my purse, pulled out the paper, and held it up. Her expression changed for one quick second. Then she recovered. "Oh," she said lightly, That. As if she were talking about a grocery list. I felt something inside me go still, a dangerous kind of stillness. "You typed this up," I said. She shrugged. "We were just planning ahead." I stared at her. "Planning ahead for my death?" Marcus flinched. Denise did not. "No one said that," she replied. "But let's be realistic, Gloria. Marcus is your only son. The house would go to him eventually anyway. Eventually. There it was. That quiet greed dressed up as logic. I stepped closer. Eventually is not today. She lifted her chin. You're being dramatic. And there it was again. That calm, disrespectful confidence of someone who had slowly convinced herself she had a right to what was never hers. I turned to Marcus one last time. Did you know she planned this? He looked between us, trapped. Then, very softly, he said, I knew she brought it up. That sentence broke something final in me. Not loudly, not violently, just cleanly, like a rope snapping after being pulled too long. I nodded once. Then I picked up my purse and headed for the front door. Marcus followed me. Mom, wait! Where are you going? I opened the door. To someone who still knows the difference, I said. Denise called after me. You're overreacting! I turned back only once. No, I said. I'm finally reacting. Then I walked out. The late afternoon air was thick and hot, but I barely felt it. I got into my car and drove straight to Lorraine's house with every paper in my bag and every illusion finally stripped away. By the time I pulled into her driveway, my hands were no longer shaking. My heart was still broken, but my mind was clear. And as I walked toward her front door, I understood one hard truth at last. My son and his wife were not just living in my house. They were trying to take it, and I was done pretending I did not see it. Lorraine opened the door before I even knocked twice. One look at my face, and she stepped aside without asking questions. Come in, she said softly. Her house smelled like lavender and old books. The scent almost made me cry. Almost. I placed my purse on her dining table and took out every document I had brought. The deed, the tax papers, the mortgage payoff letter, and finally, the quitclaim deed with Marcus's name already typed on it. Lorraine put on her reading glasses and began reading in silence. I sat across from her, with both hands wrapped around a mug of tea I had not touched. After several minutes, she looked up at me. Gloria, she said carefully, this is serious. I nodded once. I know. She tapped the quitclaim deed with one finger. If you had signed this, your son could have become the legal owner of your house. Even though I already knew that, hearing it out loud still felt like being struck in the chest. Lorraine kept reading. Has anyone asked you to sign anything recently? Yes, I said. Denise called it insurance paperwork. Lorraine gave me a long look. And you didn't sign? No. She leaned back in her chair. Good. Then her expression changed from concern to focus. I had seen that look before in the library, when she used to help her grandchildren solve hard homework problems. It was the face of a woman preparing to do battle with facts. Here's what we're going to do, she said. For the next hour, Lorraine explained everything in simple, clear language. Marcus and Denise were not tenants. They had no lease. They had paid no formal rent. Legally, they were guests in my home. And if I no longer wanted them there, I had the right to remove them. My stomach twisted. Even though I knew it was necessary, part of me still could not believe what I was about to do. Lorraine must have seen it in my face. She reached across the table and placed her hand gently over mine. Gloria, she said, loving your son does not require you to let him ruin you. That was the sentence that steadied me. That night, Lorraine helped me prepare a formal notice telling Marcus and Denise they had 30 days to leave my property. 30 days. It looked so clean on paper, but I knew it would not feel clean in real life. The next morning, while Lorraine arranged for the notice to be served properly, I sat in a small coffee shop 6 blocks from my house and stared at my phone. At 9:22, Marcus called. I did not answer. At 9:24, Denise called. I did not answer that either. At 9:31, Marcus sent a text. "Mom, what is this? Someone just brought us legal papers. Call me now." I read the message twice. Then I typed only one sentence. The papers explain everything. The phone started ringing again almost immediately. I turned it face down on the table. A young waitress came over and asked if I wanted more tea. "Yes," I said. My voice sounded calm. Inside, I was shaking. An hour later, Marcus walked into the coffee shop. His eyes were red. His face looked pale and tired. He spotted me near the window and came straight over. "Mom," he said, breathless, "please talk to me." He sat down across from me without asking. For a moment, I could not speak, because I was not just looking at a grown man who had betrayed me. I was looking at the little boy I once carried to bed when he fell asleep on his couch. I was looking at the teenager who cried in my arms after his first heartbreak. I was looking at my son, and that made everything harder. Finally, I reached into my purse and placed the quitclaim deed on the table between us. His face changed instantly. "I can explain," he whispered. I looked him directly in the eyes. "You don't need to," I said. "I understand perfectly." He stared at the paper. "Mom, it wasn't supposed to happen like this." "Like what?" I asked. "Like me finding out?" He covered his face with both hands. "Denise said it would protect the house." I let out a small, bitter laugh. "Protect it from who? Me?" He looked miserable now. Good. He needed to. "Marcus," I said quietly, "do you know what is standard in this world?" He said nothing. A mother works 2 jobs so her son can grow up in a safe home. A mother keeps the lights on after her husband dies. A mother opens her door when her child says he needs help. He lowered his eyes. "That is standard," I continued. "What is not standard is changing my locks, moving my mother's chair, and preparing papers to take my home while I am still alive." His shoulders shook slightly. "I didn't stop it," he said finally. That hurt more than any lie, because it was the truth. For the next 3 weeks, the house became unbearable. Denise barely spoke to me unless she absolutely had to. When she did, her voice was cold and sharp. She packed loudly, slammed drawers, and muttered under her breath when she thought I could not hear. Marcus moved through the rooms like a ghost. Sometimes he looked angry, sometimes ashamed, sometimes lost. Mostly, he looked like a man who had waited too long to choose the right side. On the 28th day, the moving truck came. I sat in my rocking chair by the front window and watched strangers carry boxes out of my house. Denise gave directions with crossed arms and a hard jaw. She never once looked at me. Marcus came to the front porch alone just before they finished. He held out the house key. The new one. The wrong one. I took it from his hand. Then I gave him a small envelope. Inside was a check to help with 1 month's apartment deposit and a handwritten note. He opened it slowly. It said, "I love you. I always will. But love is not the same as permission. Build your own life." He read it twice. Then he folded it carefully and put it in his pocket. His chin trembled. "Thank you," he said quietly. I nodded, but I did not cry. Not yet. I watched them drive away until the truck turned the corner and disappeared. Only then did I let the silence settle around me. The house felt empty, but for the first time in a long time, it also felt honest. That same evening, I called a locksmith, a different one. When he arrived, I stood at the front door and said, "I want the original lock back." He looked confused. "The original one?" "Yes," I said, "the one that belongs here." An hour later, I held my old key in my hand again. I slid it into the lock. It turned smoothly. Something inside me turned too. I opened every window in the house. Warm Georgia air flowed through the rooms, carrying the smell of grass, summer heat, and magnolia. Then, I looked at the living room, at the gray sectional sofa, at the pale walls Denise had chosen, at the cold space she had tried to make hers. The next morning, I dragged that ugly gray sofa to the curb. It took me time, and I had to stop twice to catch my breath, but I did it. Then I went into the garage, found a can of warm, honey-colored paint I had bought years earlier, and spent 2 days repainting my living room. My knees hurt, my shoulders burned, but every brush stroke felt like I was taking my name back. When I finished, I put my mother's rocking chair exactly where it had always belonged, by the front window in the afternoon light. And when I sat down in it that evening, I finally cried. Not because I had lost my son, but because I had almost lost myself. Now it's time to learn vocabulary from today's story. Betrayal means hurting someone who trusted you. Example: Marcus's actions felt like betrayal. Property means land, house, or things someone owns. Example: the house was Gloria's property. Quitclaim deed is a legal paper used to transfer property ownership. Example: Gloria found a quitclaim deed with Marcus's name on it. Owner means the person who legally has something. Example: Gloria was the owner of the house. Guest means someone staying in another person's home. Example: Marcus and Denise were guests in Gloria's house. Permission means approval to do something. Example: Denise made changes without Gloria's permission. Notice means an official warning or message. Example: Gloria gave them notice to leave. Locked out means unable to enter because the door is locked. Example: Gloria was locked out of her own home. Shocked means very surprised in a painful way. Example: Gloria was shocked when she found the papers. Protect means to keep safe from harm. Example: Gloria wanted to protect her home. Silence means not speaking. Example: Marcus's silence hurt Gloria deeply. Respect means treating someone with care and value. Example: Denise did not show respect. Boundary means a personal limit. Example: Gloria finally created a strong boundary. Ashamed means feeling bad about your actions. Example: Marcus looked ashamed. Steady means calm and not shaking. Example: Gloria tried to keep her voice steady. Claim means to say something belongs to you. Example: Denise acted like the house was hers. Restore means to return something to its original condition. Example: Gloria restored the original lock. Wounded means emotionally hurt. Example: Gloria felt deeply wounded. Courage means strength in a difficult situation. Example: Gloria needed courage to stand up for herself. Clarity means clear understanding. Example: Gloria finally had clarity. Try to use these words in your own sentences. That is one of the best ways to improve your English. Now, it's time for shadowing practice. Listen, pause, and repeat after me. This is my house. You should have asked me. I trusted my own family. He said nothing. That hurt the most. I found the papers. They were trying to take everything. I was afraid, but I stayed calm. Love is not permission. I had to protect myself. I opened the door to the truth. I was not confused anymore. I chose respect. I chose courage. I took my life back. Read these sentences again slowly. Then read them one more time with feeling. That is how your English becomes more natural and emotional. Thank you so much for listening to this story on English Parlor. I hope you enjoyed the story and learned some useful English today. Now I want to hear from you. What would you do if someone changed the locks on your house? Do you think Marcus was weak or truly sorry? And what lesson did you learn from Gloria's story? Write your answers in the comments. Take care, keep learning, and keep improving your English with stories. See you next time.